Brenda talking about the election and serve.
Sounds good. All right, welcome back, everybody. So tonight was our first dinner discussion. I thought it went really well, so thanks to the board members for your time and the discussion. I thought that was really, really good. We're now ready to move forward with our business meeting. Do I have a motion to approve electronic meeting participation for Marty Graham, who is out of town?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
6 in favor.
The motion carries. Our student representatives tonight are Alexander Jobst from Auburn High School and Li Shu Wong from Blacksburg High School. Will you all please read our mission and belief statements?
There you go. MCPS is an innovative educational community. We value diversity and we are committed to equity and inclusion. MCPS empowers learners to realize success in an ever-changing global society through collaborations with communities, families, staff, and students.
MCPS provides a safe, engaging learning environment and intentional exposure to positive social, emotional, and academic experiences. All students can learn in order to pursue their dreams. Schools are safe places of joy, wonder, and creativity. Every person deserves to be loved, valued, and respected. Kindness is an essential skill of a responsible, productive community member. The diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths.
All people deserve equitable access to opportunities and resources. Every child deserves an advocate. Honoring the voices and students and other stakeholders strengthens the school community. Open communication and feedback are vital to our growth. Learning and teaching are collective efforts that begin at birth and involve the entire community. And finally, relationship building and high expectations are foundational to student success.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Li Shu. All right, our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address, and we have the option to extend in 30-minute increments, which Ms. Drake will remind us of. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business and then hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions, so please keep the disruptions to a minimum so more speakers can speak. I will call each speaker up by name in the order they signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address, and the screen will show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when time is up. Please state your name and the area of the county you live in. The first speakers are Jeff Fahrenkopf and Bob Beard.
Jeff Fahrenkopf from the Childress area of Montgomery County. Thank you. I wish to address the Montgomery County voting constituents and the 2023 school board candidates. I was grateful to attend the school board candidates forum on September 7th. It was very beneficial to observe and provided good insights to how candidates might solve problems and where their governance lies. It was difficult to walk out of that meeting knowing that the status quo of today's school board thinking will now spill over to the future school board with groupthink. 4 of the 5 candidates' responses to almost all questions, including the biggest concern facing the school board, was to spend more money. Only 1 candidate presented basic education coupled with discipline as the primary need and solution. If you like how Washington, D.C. runs, then you will love how many of the new school board candidates will govern. No one will argue that adequate funding is needed to run a school system, but it is not the end-all solution. In the rest of the world, problems are identified and solved by competition and free market solutions. But public educators believe that they have the right to your tax money to spend it at will. 4 or 5 candidates spoke the mantra, public money for public use, over and over again. It was amazing how many times the school board and the Board of Supervisor candidates repeated this mantra. It's all about the children ends when you want to use your school tax dollars for educating your child with consistent values for your child's education. No competition and no free market capitalism solutions accepted to improve the school systems. You have no right to ask, and shame on you for even thinking this, is the attitude of regressive school board and Board of Supervisors and state legislative candidates. Montgomery County constituents, this cute expression, public money for public use, is simply a straw man you need to be aware of. It is your tax dollars, and one day it should follow your child, if it really is all about the children. Why do your values for your child not matter enough? Helping students with behavioral or mental issues is important. However, embracing those issues as normal behavior and their plight similar to past racial issues, and then to integrate into the classroom teachings is not good for the whole. In addition, the mischaracterization of Governor Youngkin's course correction to Governor Northam's transgender model policy by 3 of the candidates was mind-boggling, indicating they clearly have not read either of the 2 policies or even the Montgomery County policy. Ask yourself who favors and put into writing dignity and respect for all students and parents. Montgomery County constituents, you have some important voting to do this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm
Franklin.
happy to submit this to... Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Bob Beard, and after that, Kimberly Williamson.
I'm not going to speak tonight after all.
Okay, all right. So it's Kimberly Williamson's turn, and after that, Joanne Price.
Kimberly Williamson from Christiansburg. Some things bear repeating. Jesus is in love with his creation. That is each one of you. Being born male or female is your birthright and your inheritance.
Wow.
Being born male or female is your birthright and your inheritance. You were not born neutral. You were not born haphazardly or with random body parts or random DNA structure. You were lovingly and extravagantly created by a deeply and intimately loving God, with the high honor of being either male or female, with all the magnificent wonders that each of these entails. God has also blessed each one of you with the inheritance of creativity and personality, discovery and the creative expression of your likes, your dislikes, your creative passions, the joy of being you as a son or a daughter of God. These things take a lifetime to discover. Do not let anyone tell you, and do not teach or allow to be taught to any young person that his or her personality development means they must change their body or the perception of it to become a different gender, that they were not made correctly already as male or female. This is highly dishonoring to that young person, and it is a twisted lie that will disfigure them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and possibly physically for the rest of their lives. But to those who have already gone down this path, there is good news. God says in John 8:32 that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That truth is Jesus as described in the Bible. What does he have to say? Genesis 1:27, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Psalm 139:13-14, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit them together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. It is amazing to think about. Your workmanship is marvelous, and how well I know it. Song of Solomon 4:7. You are beautiful from head to toe, my dear love, beautiful beyond compare, absolutely flawless. John 3:16. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his Son, his one and only Son, and this is why, so that no one should come to destruction or be lost. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and everlasting life. Rediscover your real identity, your birthright from Jesus today.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Next up is Joanne Price, and after that, Martin Pisano Franco. I don't see Ms. Price, so Martin Pisano Franco. And then after that is Chris Thomas.
I'm Martin Prezano Franco, and I'm a student at Eastern Montgomery High School. Members of the school board, over the last few years, it'd be difficult not to have heard about Eastern Montgomery's girls soccer team. They have won 3 straight, championships. It's kind of hard not to hear about that. It shows that Eastern Montgomery has a formidable athletic program. However, you may not have heard so much about their running teams. Eastern Montgomery High School has both an outdoor track and field program as well as a cross-country team in the fall, both of which perform excellently on the state stage each year. Just last year at Green Hill Park in Salem, the boys cross-country team placed 4th in the state and the girls placed in 6th. Despite running being an extremely competitive and demanding sport, Eastern Montgomery has seen countless athletes go on to race at the collegiate level, especially in recent years. Even still, running teams at EMHS are at a great disadvantage. Unlike many other schools in East Montgomery County or neighboring regions, there is no indoor track and field program to allow students to continually train and improve throughout the year. With cross-country operating during the fall season and outdoor track and field operating during the spring and early summer, there is a large gap between the two. While most programs continue to hold practices and are provided opportunities to compete throughout the year, Eastern Montgomery lacks the resources and equal chance. At the end of the 2022-2023 school year, a petition began in the high school to get an indoor track team, with almost 100 names of the sport listed. While those numbers may seem small compared to schools like Blacksburg, Christiansburg, schools that accounts for almost 1/3 of the students at Eastern Montgomery High School. Even during the summer, it looked hopeful that the EMHS would be seeing a great deal of change in their running programs, especially considering the news of a new rubberized track. However, it was brought to light at the beginning of the current school year that the funding of such endeavors have fallen short. I urge you to take into consideration the apparent support and advantages of which these additions to EMHS can provide. For years, funding has been the single most influential factor in Eastern Montgomery sports and academic performance. It is crucial that the trend cannot continue. With the board's help, our running teams could be taking state champ titles in no time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pisano Franco. Next up is Chris Thomas.
Members of the board, I'd like to address some inaccuracies and misconceptions in the comments this evening. For starters, yes, our schools do need more money. We have more students than we used to have. And money is worth less than it used to be. Public education, simply put, costs something. I hear a lot about free market capitalism, but free market capitalism has a luxury of picking and choosing which students get to be educated. And the public schools don't have that luxury. I'm gratified to hear about mental health issues or behavioral issues, and those are important and serious concerns in education, but I find it puzzling that one speaker seemed to value those things while ignoring the fact that the much vaunted free market would be empowered to simply refuse admission to the students who need those services the most. Another speaker seemed to think that God does not make mistakes, the duck-billed platypus notwithstanding. God did not create you neutral, I assume she, asserted. The unbelievable arrogance of this nonsense absolutely staggers me. We are all of us, able and empowered to engage God's creation as we see fit. I see that our superintendent, despite being born with less than fantastic eyesight, has chosen to spit in God's eye and wear glasses. More power to you. Chair Chewbacca, Mr. Hudson, you've likewise spurned your creator by shaving off the facial hair that you were honored with by your infallible creator. Even Miss Williamson, I suppose that could be your natural hair color. Transgender children are born as they're born, and their identity is theirs and theirs alone, just like yours or mine is ours alone. To tell them that their identity is somehow a sin, a fight against God's creation, when yours or mine is not, is to look at who they are in their soul, the only part of them, if any, that we can surely say was created perfect by God, and tell them that part is a sin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Seeing no other speakers signed up, public address is closed. We'll move on to consent items. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider those approved. All right. Next is payment of the bills. Do I have a motion to pay the bills as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, board? All right, Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin? Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton? Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to accept receipt of the financial summary report?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin? Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton? Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to the business meeting portion of our meeting. First, we'll start with a report from the superintendent. Dr. Reagan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Chewbacca. I only got a few things to speak about today. One is to say I'm happy to report that we're off to a great start of the school year. And it's, as I look at the calendar, it's hard to believe we're midway through September already. And I do believe we've laid the foundation for a great school year. I'm looking forward to moving forward. One of the things I had a recent opportunity to do is visit a number of the sporting events throughout the county. And it's just exciting to see our kids participating in the competitive sports. But what's equally rewarding is to see our community and our parents and just our larger community as a whole come out and support our kids. There's great value in extracurricular activities, and it does help bind and bring our community together. I had the great fortune to go to the Auburn High School, Eastern Montgomery High School football game last Friday night. And one, it was a great night for football, just being out there again as a former coach and player. But it was really nice to see this friendly rivalry, mostly friendly. There was a little silliness towards the end of the game. But the community members that were there, we had grandparents there, and they had watched their sons and their grandsons and their granddaughters, and it really unites our community, and sometimes we lose sight of what that value brings. And it was really rewarding to me, and it made me feel proud to be a part of this community. And the other thing I had a fortune to attend was the Festival of Bands that was hosted at Christiansburg High School over the weekend, on Saturday. All 4 of our schools were there, along with Galax. The high school from Galax participated as well. And they just did a phenomenal job. If you're looking at the Eastern Montgomery marching band, it doesn't have a fraction of the members as Blacksburg, but they were out there, and I think it was a Taylor Swift song they did. They did a great job, and it's just so fun to watch our kids perform in that way. And again, the value that brings to our education system, I can't underestimate. But what was equally refreshing for me to see, and it was hot, if you remember when the sun was out that day, it felt like we're in the middle of the summer. Our staff members and our teachers and our coordinators and our band people and our marching band and all the staff that we had there, they were out there all day Saturday working with the kids and trying to get them to bring out the best. And then you see the parents, who were probably working just as hard, if not harder, our band parents, setting things up, moving all the stuff behind the scenes so that our kids could go out there and shine. And I really think those kind of activities exemplify what our community is all about. And I was just proud to be there. It was a great day. And I can't wait to see where that brings our marching bands throughout the school year. That's all I have, Board Chair Chewbacca.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Bregan. Next up is a budget update from the General Assembly, and I think it's right back to you.
I'm actually going to give it over to Dr. Whitaker, who's in charge of our finances. You may or may not have heard the Assembly passed I want to say it's a resolution, I'm not sure that's a term, but they passed the budget where they're going to increase money for school funding, and the governor had 7 days to sign it or not, and I'm happy to report that he did sign it, which will mean some additional funding for our division particularly, but all the schools. And Dr. Whitaker is going to talk to that a little bit.
Wonderful. Let me grab that. All right. So I just want to provide you an overview of the information that we have received. Divisions have received the initial estimates for increases to direct aid based upon the BDOE projected average daily membership, which you know is ADM. But we've not yet received the state calculation tool, which will allow us to account for the variances in our ADM. So we do have an initial number from them, which is $4.5 million. That's based on ADM of 9524. Last year's budget, this year's budget was originally based on 9453.67. But our actual enrollment right now is closer to 9387. So while they've provided us that number, we need to get the calculation tool so that we can put in our actual ADM before we can let the school board know exactly what that number is going to be. It's not something that we have the calculations to do internally. So you'll see that number change because our enrollment is lower than the number that they've estimated it based upon. What we do know is that the amended budget provides funding for direct aid, and it also provides it for additional support for supplemental assistance education programs. So I'll briefly explain them to you. The amendments to direct aid include SOQ support staff increases, funding for all-in implementation, a 2% salary compensation effective January 1st, and an increase in lottery proceeds for direct aid. Under the supplemental education assistance or school safety and security grants, critical national security language grants, and Virginia Preschool Initiative mixed delivery programs. So I can share with you what we know now, but until we get that calc tool and their explanation language, we can only provide to you what they've provided to us so far. So SOQ positions will increase from 21 per 1,000 to 24 support staff positions per 1,000. It does not mandate that we add additional positions, and that those funds may be used for additional instructional staffing as well. The funding for all-in is the approach for implementation of Virginia Literacy Act, learning loss, and additional operating and infrastructure support. So the all-in program recommends a focus on the all-in approach. And what that means is 70% of the funds would need to be spent in grade 3 through 8 high-intensity tutoring, 20% Virginia Literacy Act, and 10% on chronic absenteeism. What will happen once they provide more information is they're going to provide us with that, and then Dr. Wickham and Dr. Bragan will work to submit a plan for approval. They'll have to detail exactly what approaches they're using. There is a workbook that went out as well that identifies how they would like us to do that. The state will have to approve our plan prior to us being able to spend those funds. The 2% salary increase is compensation for SOQ instructional and support positions. So as a reminder, some of our positions are SOQ, others are not, and so this would mandate that SOQ positions receive those raises. You have to be able to previously certify a minimum average of 2.5% local salary increase in 23 and 24, which we can do. And you have to commit to providing at least 2% increase to those positions effective no later than January 1st to be eligible for the funds. It says local matching funds are required to receive state funds. So what that means is we would have to find the funds in order to give the raise to the other individuals. Direct aid budget amendments, this provides $86.2 million in lottery proceeds, but it does not give any additional funding to schools. What that does is it switches the funding source for a portion of the at-risk add-on program from the general fund, oh, I missed my Y on lottery there, to lottery. So it's not any additional money for us, it's just a different stream that they are using to provide those funds. The grant programs that we'll learn a little bit more about later are the school safety and security grants. The VDOE will provide us guidelines when they have those ready. There will be prioritization for grants that'll be based on identified deficiencies and the composite index of the school divisions that apply. Critical national security language grants will provide guidelines for hiring one or more teachers for courses that are identified as critical by the National Security Language for Youth Scholarship Program. We'll get more information about that later as well. The VPI Mixed Delivery Program will exempt mixed delivery providers that are recipients of VPI from regulatory and statutory provisions related to teacher licensure. The providers must meet the expectations of the statewide measurement and improvement system. So that's the information we have available at this time. You know, it just came out last week, so we will update you as soon as we get more, but we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of what had been released last week.
Can you go back to slide 6? Yeah, that one.
Okay.
So, I'm going to bet you already did that. What would this cost us about?
It'll be hard until we get it, but we're thinking about $750,000.
And that's in addition to what they're,
Yes.
so we're required to give a 2% increase no later than January 1st.
Correct.
And then we have to give the same amount increase, but not all of our positions are SOQ.
Correct.
What, about half of them are?
So, yeah, about 52% are SOQ and 48% are not. I don't know exactly yet what they mean by the local matching funds, other than they said they're required. So we'll get more information later. That's all that they've told us at this time.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what happens every time they say that they're giving raises to teachers, that they only give it to
The SOQ.
the SOQ, which means the jurisdictions have to find the funds to make sure everyone is getting a proper raise.
Correct.
Or as much as they're gonna do.
Yes. There are SOQ positions that are instructional, and there are SOQ positions that are support positions, but either category is completely funded.
How do they designate what positions are SOQ and what's not?
That's a great question, and I think I probably heard Katie snicker somewhere over there. But essentially, they use a formula. They make an identifier. They base it upon your enrollment, your ADM, and then it also is an average salary. Doesn't mean that's what we pay. We may pay more, we may pay less, and it also is related to the composite index as well. So they do give us in our calc tool, these are the number of positions for each category that they fund. Some of them are like 2.37 positions, so, you know, a part of a person. Some of them may be less positions than we have, because we have a lot more staff than what they would fund us for. So it's a very interesting formula. Katie, if you want to explain it in a different way?
I just want to clarify as well on this slide. So we had in this year's budget a raise,
Yes.
right? And that had a match associated with that too, right? This is an additional.
In addition.
Okay.
An additional 2%.
Okay, and the only way we get this is if we can find the match, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Just-
Again, they haven't indicated exactly, like, they have not said you must give it to every person, but they have said local matching funds are required. So we will get more from them, but this is what they've told us at this time. Typically, what they do when they release the calc tools, it has notes with it that explains each of those areas to us. But the state hasn't released the calc tool because, you know, the governor just signed it at the end of last week, so they haven't had an opportunity to release that tool to us yet. We do not have an estimated time frame for when we'll get it.
I don't understand this, because we're fiscal year, what are we, July to June? And so, yeah, you need to give a raise, a 2% raise, January 1st, but we're in the middle of a fiscal year. So where are we supposed to find $750,000 in the middle? Why are you laughing?
Because he has the same question.
Same thing.
Magic. No, you know, I think it's up to school divisions and localities to figure out how to do that. Some divisions are able to do that within the budget they have. They make cuts. Maybe they don't hire positions as they become vacant.
Well, it defeats the purpose.
Right. Some are within the current budget where, you know, sometimes you ask, the different boards will ask Board of Supervisors for additional funding, but it's in the middle of their budget year as well. So it is addressed uniquely by each school division and each school board and how they do that. Some don't give the raise because they can't afford to.
And I think this came from, again, being new to the Commonwealth, they were talking about this 2% way back in February, right? Initially, they had said a 5% raise, and all of a sudden, it was a
Yeah, they were-
2%
yeah,
raise that
you're
was,
right. I
that
do
was
remember
spoken
that.
about. And actually, the county employees got 7% based on that
Mm-hmm.
number. But at some point, the legislature decided to break for the summer without addressing the skinny budget, as I'm getting familiar with these terms. And I guess when they came back into session, they were able to use some of that surplus and dedicated the funds here. It is a hardship, though, middle of the year, changing the budget process, but what I'm told is that happens annually here, when our ADM goes up or down, and we may get a mid-year adjustment, which is really difficult. It's hard to manage that.
That's correct. But at least you can sort of budget ahead for that, knowing it might be coming, then this one's kind of like out of the blue.
So I would envision in the next few weeks, we will come to you with more concrete information and data, what the calc tool would look like and what that would look like for us, and if we're able to fund it or not able to fund it, and give you all information to make a decision.
Okay, so it talks, it says, they said, okay, we're gonna give additional funding to public education. But this seems like there are so many guidelines, some still yet to come, that may restrict how we use the money, how much we have to match for salaries. That is back to that same old shell game. Yeah, we're funding public education, but not really, because we just took the P from underneath the shell, and you all figure out how you get it done without the P. It's, yeah. So, long story short, it falls back to the citizens within their localities to raise the money to help fund public education.
So, I want to understand, so we're expecting to get $4 million a year more, you had 4.5, I'm going to call it 4 for now, at least $4 million a year extra. And that's recurring money. But we're required to spend some of that certain ways, so I'm just trying to figure out some of that, if it seems like it's there. Because our SOQ positions are definitely going up, so I'm assuming we're going to see some benefit from this. What I'm having a hard time with I usually throw round numbers in my head, and I want to say for each % raise that we give our staff, if we chose to give a 1% raise on our own, what is it? Do you know off the top of your head what that usually costs? I want to say it's either 1 or 2 million. I can't remember which.
I'd rather, if Katie can come up, I would rather her come up with those.
We typically estimate a 1% of a raise as between $1 and $1.1 million.
Okay, yeah, so I'm right there. Okay, so this is a 2% raise.
1 to 1.5, is that what you said?
1 to 1.1.
1.1, so I'm just going to use the round numbers to keep the math easy. So a 2% raise would be roughly cost us $2 million, but since the state's picking up the tab for half of the SOQ positions, right, this is actually, right, if I'm doing my math right here, so it's $2 million is what it would cost us, but they're going to give us $1 million for that, right? So it's going to cost us, moving forward.
I don't believe that we know, yeah.
No. So part of it, though, you have to remember, they're only doing it effective January.
Correct. No, I get that. Yeah, I know.
So it would be, they would back down to $1 million, and then roughly half of that.
Correct, but I guess, yeah, all right. I also think, I guess, in the steady state, right? So once we get past this year, for future budget years, we'll have to get an extra, at least $1 million from the county to sustain that, right, in the future. But then so for this year, we would have to come up with half of that on our own, which is, I guess, is where your 700,000 estimate came from.
The number on the tool they gave us for now is for 421,000 is what they would give us.
For this year?
Yes. That's how much.
So
Now,
they would give
again,
us
that's
money.
based on the higher ADM. So that's why we have to wait, and that, it's very, everything's kind of interconnected, so we can give you our best guesses.
No,
but
I don't need
until we
exact
can
numbers.
plug in that ADM, but based upon the higher ADM, the number they have is 421,000 is what they're gonna give us towards the raises.
For the budget cycle that we're already in.
Current, yes,
Okay.
For the half a year.
for that half of a year,
Right, but we still have to come up
with the remaining,
funds.
yeah.
Which would be roughly.
So that's 1.1.
Roughly another half.
700,
Oh, I see, okay, so that's where you're getting the 700. But that's just for this year.
Yeah, because that's.
In future years, we'll need about $1 million
Yes, for the whole year.
for the whole year. So, I mean, this is a good starting conversation, I think, for what we were talking about earlier in the discussion about where we start talking with the Board of Supervisors. I mean, look, I don't like this fuzzy math, and I don't like the SOQ positions, which is the way it's been, right? It's still money that I think it would be a mistake for us to leave on the table. I mean, they're willing to basically fund half of this, if we come up with the other half, and I think this is the first place where we should have a priority, right, for next year's budget, right?
Now, if we decide that we can't find that match, do we lose that money, or do we just?
You have to give the raise to get the money.
Well, but you can't just use that on any of these other categories that qualify?
No, you will, we have to certify the raises that we give, and so we would have to certify that we spent the money on that, and we wouldn't be able
We
to
have
do
to give
that,
at least 2%.
to get the money.
But we wouldn't lose.
But
the-
only
We
to-
wouldn't lose the total amount, we would
No,
lose
we
the
would
amount.
just lose the
for
amount
raises.
for that, correct, the
We
441,000,
would just lose that.
yeah.
We
Well, that's what I was
wouldn't
trying to
lose
clarify. So going back to your first slide, when, again, it's all estimated, right? But that 4.5 million, a certain portion of that is designated for those raises. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And if we can't match it, we don't get to take that money that we would have gotten towards raises and put it towards
No.
all in or school safety. Okay.
So about $1 million of that, right, is dedicated towards raises?
441,000
Right now,
I mean.
of the state.
of that 4.5
The future
here,
increase of
Yeah.
4.5 million,
Yeah.
right? About $1 million of that, 1.1 million of that was going to be for,
you mean for a full year?
Yeah, you
Yes.
can't take
Yes.
that and move it out to the next year, if I'm understanding your
what's the, four-
question
sorry, okay,
correctly.
what's the sorry, go back to that first.
The
You were there.
4.5 would be-
4.5 is for which,
It's the
Right
state's
now.
portion, as
Now.
we
for the
estimate of the
23,
half a year.
24?
Yes.
Correct, half a
What's-
year raise of 2%.
So what's it going to be for?
For SOQ positions.
So what's it going to be for what's it going to be for 24, 20?
I mean,
They're not giving us.
I will answer that by saying that it's the new biennium, and so we won't know that until
Yeah.
December.
that's right.
And that's when the governor would present his 24-26 biennium budget. And then the General Assembly, of course, would have to approve that as well.
Yeah.
I don't mean that we're going to get another $4 million increase for those. I understand that. I guess I'm just saying, you're saying that this $4.5 million increase is coming this year.
It's for
And
this fiscal year.
Yes.
correct, but also for future fiscal years. I mean, it's
Well,
that
you
money
can't-
that we get.
you
from
can't
the state will
guarantee it.
still- Well, of course.
Yeah. I mean, you would think yes,
You would think
but
yes.
it's just like our budget. Until it's approved, last year's budget, our salary scales each year are for a year. So you would think that, but they could come in with something
So
completely
the
different.
rest of the money that's not for raises will go to these other things that are on slide 3, correct?
Correct.
The school safety and security,
Yeah.
that's all
The
part.
biggest
that's all
chunk,
part.
3 million, is for the all-in learning loss.
That's the
Oh, I
intensive
see.
tutoring.
The biggest chunk is to address learning loss. So 3 million for that,
Okay.
1.1 for the SOQ support increase 21 to 24.
Okay.
And then 421,000 for the 2% comp. Now, again, that's higher than what we'll get because it's based on higher ADM.
Correct.
But that's where that 4.53 breaks down.
Okay, I understand, thanks.
So how will our composite index affect this, or will it at all?
Those numbers are are already composite
Already,
indexed.
okay.
Yep. Indexed it. I think she made a verb. That's right.
Clear as mud.
All right, board, any other questions, comments? Okay,
So
thank you all.
I'll just,
Oh,
it'll be
sorry, go
very,
ahead.
it'll just be very interesting to see the guidelines and what they determine are mixed delivery programs and how we fund those, staff those?
Yeah, I can tell you a little if you'd like. The All-In program, and I removed the slide from here, but, sorry, I'm pushing the wrong button. There you go. The All-In program has a couple of different components. One is they really want it to be rigorous. So what that means to them is 5 days a week. For students who pass low proficient, that's for 18 weeks. For students who did not pass math or English SOL, that is 36 weeks, 5 days a week of tutoring. They want that tutoring to be done utilizing an approach of 1 to 10. So that's 1 tutor to 10 students, with them breaking them into rotating groups of 5 and 5 and using computer-based applications so that the teacher can provide 1 to 5 while they're on a computer program that's using progress monitoring. They also want to ensure that the instruction is on grade level, and so that tutor would be teaching on grade level, and then they would identify learning gaps, and while teaching on grade level content, fill those learning gaps as they see them. So they have some really detailed things that they would like to see in that. They also have a playbook that they have given out, but they're pretty specific in how they want those funds to be spent and the way they want the programs to be approached.
Is this the Literacy Act, is it?
That's the all-in.
The all-in.
Correct. I think the hardest component, and Dr. Wickham will be able to provide you more once she gets more feedback on it, is staffing. Again, finding the people to do these jobs. So they identified 3 groups in what I saw, which were licensed teacher, retired teachers, or any volunteer who might be able to do it and use the programs. So they think that we can find a wide variety of people to be able to provide the all-in tutoring, but I would foresee that will be the hardest part, is finding people to do it. I don't know if they'll look at it in day during our intervention time. We don't know if they say you can or cannot do it in the day yet, unless Dr. Wickham knows something different about that.
You can, if your schedule has an IE time, you cannot supplant, it has to supplement. So if you have an IE time built into your day, for example, for 30 minutes, you can do 30 minutes, but it has to be an hour chunk. So if you did 30 during the day, you'd have to do 30 minutes before or after school.
Wait, I thought you said it had to be an hour chunk.
She said
An hour. It has to be an hour, 3 to 5 times a week, so 3 to 5 hours.
Split it up, 30 and 30.
You can do 30 before school, 30 after school, but it has to be an hour total
Per day?
per day.
Right. So are we going to be providing transportation for students before school and after school?
So after school, that's our goal. Before school, we wouldn't be able to do it because of our bus runs, but after school, that's our goal.
So our goal.
Our goal.
Some of the funding is geared towards that, too.
Yes.
Okay. So one of my concerns is, in the state of Virginia and across the country, we're filling classrooms and other positions with unlicensed teachers and instructors. And even though folks may be capable, but if they haven't gone through that process, where's that going to end us up down the road? With schools full of folks who are not licensed? Is anybody coming in and I can read and write and do math, so I can teach this class?
Well, that's what some people think.
And to staff these programs, which I think are very, very needed, it's going to be a struggle. Yeah.
I have to get some parents.
So, with our program with our retirees, could that be a targeted group just to do this program?
We could, but I would say many of them do their days very quickly, so there may be it's not a huge pool. We could certainly use them for it, but it's not a huge pool, and many of them try to get them done up front so they don't have to work for the rest of the year.
Okay. Let's, I guess, move on to the next topic, is academic performance for 22-23. I believe this is a presentation.
I think Dr. Wickham is going to go over those assessment results.
I'm also going to ask Dr. Walker to come up and join me. He's going to help with a portion of this as well. Thank you, sir. So just a reminder, state accreditation this year for 23-24 is determined by last year's SOL testing. This year it does include chronic absenteeism. Last year, chronic absenteeism was waived. Chronic absenteeism does include both excused and unexcused absences. For high schools, it also includes college, career, and civic readiness. And we do anticipate that all 19 of our schools will be accredited, with one of those accredited with conditions. This graph shows our reading SOL pass rates for all students over the past few years as compared to the average for the state. You can see that while our raw pass rates are higher than the state average in reading, we have not returned to pre-COVID scores. That's the case for all of our core content areas. Also, I want to point out that proficiency cut scores were lowered between 2018 and 2021 test administrations. So basically what that means is a passing score back in 18, 19, 2021 is different than what a passing score is in 22, 23. So even though we give you this data over a period of time, because of the changes that the state made, really the only valid comparison that you could probably make any sense out of is comparing MCPS to Virginia at any given time. This graph shows our reading SOL pass rates for our black students compared to the state average. Last year, the state added an additional reporting group for multiple race students. The Department of Education's minimal threshold to be considered as a major racial or ethnic student group is 5%. Families who report as multiple races exceeded 5% last year, so now this reporting category does count, and you can see our average here in Montgomery County is close to that of the state average. The reading scores of our white students in Montgomery County is below state average. Here you can see our scores for students with disabilities. Again, in reading, our students with disabilities perform below state average. The performance of our economically disadvantaged students close to the state average, a point off. And the performance of our English learners is above the state average in reading. So here we're switching gears to math. This graph shows our math SOL pass rates for all students over the past few years, again, compared to the state. And like reading, you can see that while our raw pass rate increased over last year, we're higher than the state. We have not returned to pre-pandemic scores.
Did math have different cut scores as well?
Yes, both math and reading.
These are based on SOL.
Yes, ma'am.
Our SOL is not always like 400 is passing?
So there's a cut score that determines that 400. That means so many right out of the total number.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
Math scores for black students in Montgomery County lower than the state average. Multiple race students, you can see here, higher than the state average. Math scores for white students, just below the state average. Our scores for our students with disabilities is below the state average. And our economically disadvantaged students in math outperform the state average. English learners in math, like in reading, well above the state average. Here we have our science scores. Again, you can see that our science scores are higher than the state average. Chronic absenteeism, students who are absent for 10% or more of the school year are considered to be chronically absent. regardless of whether or not those absences are excused or unexcused. And that's important because if, let's say, a child is out for a week and they're sick, that still counts towards chronic absenteeism rate. And you can see here that our absent rates continue to increase.
There isn't a state average on this one,
No, they haven't provided a state average.
but I'm assuming the state average would follow that trend, looking at
Yes,
the
we've got.
years that it went up.
We have some numbers in a little bit that, to
Yeah.
show that. You can see that our on-time graduation rates for our students who complete high school in 4 years continue to be strong, over 90%. So last week, the VDOE released some information I want to share with you. The first line there, we've talked about those cut scores. Grades 3 through 8 reading and math scores, of course, still well behind those students who are in grades 3 through 8 back prior to the pandemic. High school students who primarily take one reading test, one math test, and one science test, they need those tests to graduate from high school for verified credits. You can see that those students have rebounded more quickly than our younger students. And chronic absenteeism has nearly doubled since 2018 across the state. So some key takeaways here again, so these are the numbers statewide on a chart that they released last week. Again, you can see prior to COVID, down at 9%, up to 17% last year.
These are the state numbers.
Those are the state numbers, yes. So reading pass rates based on attendance, I think this is fascinating because students who miss less than 18 days, you can see that the pass rate across the state, 73%, and you can see the impact. You know, obviously, I think most of us understand the more days you miss from school, the more instruction you miss, the worse off your performance will be. Sure.
Sorry, I guess, I look at something like that, is this, state,
That's state average.
state data?
That's,
Is there like any data of why it's gone up? Like what has caused the increase in absenteeism?
I can share that just based on what it is that we see here, and it's an abundance of caution, right? So during the pandemic and, you know, right after the pandemic, we strongly encouraged, if you think you might be sick, stay home. That's part of it, whereas before, you know, if you feel like you can make it, you're not throwing up, you don't have a fever, come to school. So the messaging has been different. And then also, because we were out of school for a while, some students got used to staying home.
And I also wondered if also it would be partly because now everybody's there's more online capabilities, so more can be, if you keep your child home, they can do, or at least there might be the thought process that you can still do more from home than before. I mean, think about it, 2018, 2019, 9.5% of our students had Chromebooks, and now all of a sudden every single one does, and every single one learned how to do Google, and all teachers now have Google Classrooms or some sort of online presence that didn't exist before, so I just wonder if that's just a number that's never going to quite go down.
So this is my hope. My hope is that someone other than us will actually look at this data and say, while technology is great, an in-person, at school, teacher makes a difference.
But I guess, so that was going to be my original question, is the whole concept of correlation not necessarily meaning causation, right? So, you know, kids who maybe aren't as interested in school are maybe more likely to be absent, or maybe already more likely not to. I mean, I'm sure there is some correlation there, or some causation there, but do we know? I mean, has the state, nobody's really done a study on this.
This is completely fresh data.
All right, fair enough.
So,
Consider it winds up 20, because I think you used
You know, I wonder if, kind of building upon what Sue said, like, I wonder if parents maybe got comfortable with the notion back during the pandemic, if you stayed home, you know, our teachers were going to bend over backwards to make sure your kids got that instruction that they were missing. But we're not doing that now, right? Because that wasn't tenable, and we're not in the pandemic anymore, right? But I wonder if there's some lingering, if my kid has to stay home because of COVID, then it's okay, the teacher's going to give them all this instruction they're going to miss, and that's not the case. It seems obvious to us, but I wonder if some parents maybe still have that assumption.
I think also when you're looking at the number of days that students are missing, so when you're looking at close to 20 days, for example, you know, at that point in time, I've missed a month of school. And it's awfully hard with, you know, even teachers with the absolute best effort in trying to support that makeup work, that's really hard to make up that work.
Do we no longer report absences, like we don't have to report absences at a certain point in time?
We do. And so after 3 days, there's a phone call, there's a letter, there's going to court. But basically what happens, if you take a family to court because of chronic absenteeism, the judge orders the family to send their children to school. That's the long and short of it, right? And we, you know, as a school system, our principals, our teachers, they're begging families to send their children to school anyway. So I don't know that, you know, that that's really a solution.
To, and with ease, I'm gonna say this, get stricter on that policy, because I talked to many parents and it's like, well, I couldn't get him to go to school this morning, I just couldn't get him out, because it has become a habit. And then it's like we work with everybody that we can to try to make up and make amends, but I think we've made it too easy.
I think that's a great question, and what we're finding is that the consequences that we have, like sending the letter, meeting with families, taking them to court, it's not working for us at this point in time. So our principals, they've done a great job trying to brainstorm some solutions this year. You know, how do we do a better job of communicating that to families? How do we make sure that, you know, families know that when Barbara has missed, you know, 5 days of school, what this really means? So working hard to try to get the message out there that we need your help. I mean, we even have principals and staff members who are going out to homes and picking students up to bring them to school.
And when I make that comment, I don't put it on the schools. I know we're doing everything we can do, but I do think there comes a point where sometimes we have to say, okay, parents, this is your job. I'm a believer, it's parents' job, and this is one of the things that I continue saying, it hits home. They gotta step up, and I think that's where that discipline issue of saying, hey, this is what's gonna happen if you don't step up.
Okay, yeah.
Unless you-
Yeah, I wanted to point out that though the different messaging about, oh, you're sick, don't come to school anymore, that's different post-COVID, and also the increased online capabilities. Yes, we acknowledge that. However, the one thing I did not hear mentioned is the impact of maybe mental health on absenteeism.
It's coming up.
Well, yeah, but I feel like being stricter on that being stricter on the whole absenteeism thing, well, I feel like it's going to be harder for maybe students that have been going through a lot on the mental side. So I don't know, we should consider that before maybe bunkering down on stricter measures. Not that attendance isn't important. It is important because I believe in in-person, the importance of in-person education, but I think we need to also put mental health awareness into account. Yeah. Also, I think.
Alexander, go ahead.
I also have a question about, have we done any research on the tardies of students in schools and in state?
So the state has not released any information regarding tardies, and we don't have it here, but we could certainly pull it. We do know that, you know, we have children who miss half the day still counted as present. Well, if I'm at the elementary level and I have English and math in the morning, I've just lost out on key content. So those numbers are important as well.
Yeah, lots of students might be showing up late to class, and that can add up over time, which is like worrying for, especially if you're a senior and you're like driving to school and you end up like late and you don't want to miss like important parts of class. I feel like that could be an important part too.
Well, if I could piggyback on that, you're very right. That's why I say sometimes it becomes more of a habit than it is something else, because when we've got tardies, Kevin Sears at Christiansburg started a tardy program, and you'd be surprised at how, yeah, everybody was a little mad at first, but I'm gonna tell you what, it changed the trajectory of parents going to Starbucks and going here and going there, and students bringing in all their drinks and all their coffees and 20 minutes late. And you can tell, no, you're wrong, Jamie. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And it changed the whole trajectory of what was happening at Christiansburg High School on tardies. So you're exactly right. Something needs to change.
I'd like to just piggyback on that and ask you guys, because I've had some students come to me and say that our current tardy policy actually incentivizes students sometimes to skip a day rather than be tardy because of, so can you, is that something that we need to look at?
I will say the tardiness at my school is actually like pretty, I'd say it's low because of the rule that we do have implied at our school. But I do think that that is a problem when it comes to tardiness, that people are starting to just miss a whole day instead of just coming an hour or like two later.
Yeah, same goes for our school. I feel like tardies, like accumulated tardies, are probably punished less, well, more harshly actually than like missing multiple days, because I think it might be more than 3 days warrants something big. Either that or students don't really care if they're getting called at home. They'll just say something. But tardies, I think if you're tardy to school like 3 days or something like that, it's detention or something along those lines.
That's what I've heard. And
Yeah.
and I agree with you that, I mean, obviously these aren't things that we're saying are a good thing, but I do think that maybe we need to target our policies so that they target chronic tardiness and chronic absenteeism without snagging, you know, some kids that maybe are just occasionally, you know, I'd rather that kid that's occasionally tardy, I would rather that kid be tardy three days than be tardy 2 days and then absent the third day, right? So I wonder if that's something that we need to look at.
You just gotta throw it down.
So just to touch on what Lishu said about the mental health, and I know that's a huge problem, and so I'm glad she's brought that up. But haven't we put aside funds and are doing more now to encompass that for our students? So is there a way that, I mean, I think that there was an incorporation during COVID, and there still may be, where technically students could be absent technically and use mental health. So if we're tracking that, we should be able to grab these students, get them into school, and let them speak with the counselor, and at least get them to school and try to help them. To me, it looks like the mental health issue with them being at home and not coming in would be worse than them actually coming into school and getting the help that we have put into place there for them. So is there something we can do to try to make a student feel or maybe want to try to come to school, even if they are having that issue, to at least get them there, and then have the extra added mental health capabilities that we have now than we did prior for that? I don't know if we're tracking those absences by mental health, or if we can, I don't know.
That's a really good question. Right now, for the most part, if a student takes a mental health day, they take a sick day. A parent writes a note or calls in because the student took a sick day. They don't necessarily disclose whether or not, and they don't have to disclose whether or not it's a mental health day, but I think that's an excellent idea. And certainly, we do know our students very well. We may miss a few, but being able to connect with them and their families to let them know, come to school, we have services here that can help you.
So I brought this up last year, I believe. And I am in no way diminishing mental health issues, but especially during the pandemic, for me, it really showed that adults and students sometimes have a difficult time when there's a bump in the road. And the resiliency that folks need to be, I don't know the right words, need to be prepared. And I think we are letting down our students by not helping them understand, yep, this is a bump in the road. Yeah, somebody said no, but we can move on past that. And instead, we have folks who are just, okay, I don't know what to do. I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. Well, I guess, what was it? 1918, when we had the flu pandemic? If in this country, people just said, we can't get past this, we can't keep moving forward, we wouldn't be where we are today as a country in 23. So somehow or another, we're going to need to help assure folks that they're okay, that it's okay to feel this way, but we can't just pull back and not keep trying to move forward in a manner that you did before this, or with anything in life, not just the pandemic, but how we just say, okay, I got this. It may feel awful, it may feel bad, but we have to keep going. We have to figure it out, so.
We may have to sign you
I
up to
know
come
it,
speak
and
to
I
some of
said-
our students. They need to hear that message.
That's easier said than done, having dealt with, you know, I think I had this really interesting debate with, my person who works for me, who's in her late 20s, 30s, and just the difference in the thoughts today versus like our idea of pulling up our big girl panties and moving on, and that, and I had this debate with my own daughter too, that, you know, yeah, I'd love to be able to do what you're saying, but sometimes I can't, and that's what mental health issue is. That is what the issue is. It's really hard to get past all that. It's hard to do that, and then they get anxious and frustrated, and then nothing happens, and they stay home, and I think it's just really complicated. If it was as easy as just telling them, hey, you know, it's gonna get better, the world's gonna keep turning, and we're all gonna be okay, because we're gonna get past this, I don't think, it's just a different mentality today than what
And-
we grew up with.
Right, and again, I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm not diminishing folks' mental health issues, but at the same time, because I have folks in my family and folks that I know, but sometimes we, as quite frankly, as human beings, have to say we've got to keep moving forward. And if we don't build up, and if we're not helping folks understand, this is how you can deal with this, because sometimes mental health issues are created by a situation. And we've got to learn how to overcome this situation and keep moving on. And for me, that's called resiliency, not diminishing mental health issues at all, but we've got to figure that out and how we help our students understand, you can do this. We can make this happen. We have support to help you, but we just can't stay home and not interact with the rest of the world in a way that's gonna help everyone be as productive and healthy as we can. It's just,
And although I completely understand that some of those situations could be due to mental health, I don't believe all of them are. And maybe I'm
That
speaking
is-
for myself, but not all of them are. And I do believe that what happens a lot of times is those absenteeisms escalate to the point of a learning loss, and they're failing, and then when we notify the parents, then there's a real issue. And it's like, oh my gosh, my child's gonna fail, oh my gosh, well, where you been for the 30 missed days? That's the focal that I'm looking at.
All right, let me interject and see if we can maybe get back on the presentation, and we'll have a discussion again here in a little bit, so.
All right, the next slide breaks down the chronically absentee numbers by our student groups. And as you can see here, in comparison, economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, our Hispanic, our Black students are missing school more so than our all-student group. So what are we going to do about it here in Montgomery County? What are our next steps? So these are our focus areas for the year. We've tried to, drill down to three main things. Literacy. Research tells us again and again that students who are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade are more likely to struggle the remainder of their school careers and more likely to drop out of school. Engagement. We want to make sure that our classrooms are so engaging that students want to come to school. And then, of course, the mental health piece. We know, again, that we've been working, as you all said, to increase the number of mental health support professionals in our schools. We recognize that the pandemic had a significant impact on our students' emotional, social, and mental well-being. So getting those results, increase principal autonomy and accountability for student results. So conducting monthly check-ins, for example, with principals to monitor student progress of specific students who are underperforming, having specific measurable goals for students who are underperforming that again will be monitored in a timely fashion for every school, for every principal and every teacher. Providing training to ensure that our students receive core literacy instruction based on the science of how children learn to read. Helping principals think strategically about innovative ways to increase student achievement. We're doing a book study with our principals about innovating inside of the box. There are only so many things that you can control, so what are those things that we can control to increase student achievement? And increasing and improving communication with our families. Again, it's important that our children come to school to be successful, so really getting that message out there. So school climate, again, making school that place where they're so inviting, engaging, welcoming, and safe for all students, that all of our students, all of our children will come to school. Making sure that our message really is shifting from those students to our students. We own all of our students, every child, every day, whatever it takes. We have to act with that sense of urgency. So Dr. Walker is going to share what it is that special education, our department's doing this year.
All right, to help think inside the box, or to innovate inside the box, such as Dr. Bregan would say, here's what the special education department is going to do to help support schools with student achievement. We're going to restructuring the special education department. We did so this school year, and by doing this, it helps us to increase in-person support time, at schools. We reduced the number of schools that the assignments that we had, and so that way we can have more time at schools on site. Redesigned our first and second year new teacher training into a push-in model, and this provides more on-site coaching. Instead of bringing them down to the special education department to coach, we will push in on site in the classroom, coaching and actually, showing them how, to, instruct, how to, implement special design instruction, and be able to answer any questions of any sort. Paired with individual schools that are in state or division improvement, the pairing will provide support to school-based administrators to implement their school plans, and with an emphasis on compliance and implementation of the SPED programs in their buildings. We revised our special education department, our documentation form, to include different headings to track and to provide support. These headings are based off academic strategies, reading levels. We're looking at pre- and post-test math levels, pre- and post-test reading and discipline and attendance. Each special education staff will collaborate and pair with each school board office instructional content supervisor when they visit the assigned schools. We're going to do an RFP for academic instructional assistants, and these assistants, they're academic, not behavioral. They're going to provide support in just science and social studies only, which will reduce the number of content sections that the SPED teachers will have to cover. Instead of 4 reading, math, science, social studies, they'll just do reading and math, which will push them forward to do that, while those academic aides will support in science and social studies, and give them more time to plan, more time to do the common assessments, more time to collaborate with their gen ed co-teachers. We'll continue the co-teaching and inclusive practice initiative with a focus on developing the co-teaching pairs to implement special design instruction and with those best practices for instructional delivery. We'll create a co-teaching inclusive practice hub, and this will be training in every aspect for anyone, teachers, administrators, instructional assistants, gen ed teachers. It's a one-stop shop. They'll be able to go and to get support. The support could be, presentations, it could be webinars, it could be, let's say that there's resources from universities. It could be, just anything possible that they can do to help them with, understanding special design instruction, understanding how to, modify content. Again, just anything that they need to be able to, help within the classroom setting. We'll continue to collaborate with Bradford universities and Montgomery County Public Schools instructional administrators to create level professional development tailored to each school. And we found that each school has staff that are at different levels of understanding of co-teaching, understanding of special design instruction. And so this will just, the professional development will be tailor-made to those specific schools, so that way those certain individuals can better learn. SPED department staff will pair with Bradford University's Office of Inclusive Practices during school visits and utilize co-teaching checklists during classroom walkthroughs with the school principals. We're developing before and after school tutoring programs targeting reading and math for elementary and middle school students with disabilities who are on SOL track. Also, we'll offer professional development opportunities. This is before school and after school, and these are extra professional development opportunities for anyone, administrators, teachers, gen ed, and special ed, who have additional skill sets that they want to learn. Also, principals can designate or identify their staff who are on improvement plans, who are needing extra support in their instructional delivery or skills. Also, I'm pairing with the directors of elementary and secondary education on individual walks as well, so that we all can see the same thing at the same time. And so when we go and we present to our, our quarterly reviews with our school plans, we can pretty much determine and look to see, what we saw, and also gives us an understanding of, puts more eyes within the building as well. So that's our SPED plan that we're going to implement for this school year to help improve student achievement for, at the schools.
Some additional events that are coming up from the VDOE. So on September 21st, state accreditation ratings will be released. Keep in mind the data that we just looked at are the raw pass rates. The second part of that are the accreditation ratings, which include growth. What we looked at did not include growth. So those scores obviously will be higher than those raw scores we saw. Then on September 28th, again, they'll release the on-time graduation rates, and we'll have more information for comparison. And then also the federal information will be updated and posted to the school quality profiles. So just an FYI, there is a proposal right now from the Board of Education. Basically, they're looking to separate out the accountability and the accreditation system. So you can see their timeline, but their plan for next year would be there would be a separate system where accountability is more about those raw pass rates, and then accreditation, they're looking to completely change how it's calculated. So stay tuned. And that's where we have an opportunity if anybody has any more questions.
So I don't mean to backtrack, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this before, I just started thinking. On the academic performance evaluations that we had, that was great information, thank you for providing all of that. Did we leave out writing and social studies for any reason?
So social studies is not counted as part of state accreditation anymore, so that's why that's not here. We can certainly share it. We do different things in history at the high school level. For example, we do local alternative assessments. Schools had the choice, for example, in fourth grade as to whether or not to still give the SOL test or to do a local alternative assessment. So different schools do different things, so that's why I didn't share, but we could certainly pull that for you. And then the writing piece, when those scores are calculated, writing becomes part of that overall reading score, but we can pull those out and share those too if you're interested.
I'm kind of interested in the writing just because I know back from the past, we have, well, and just recently from the DOE website, our writing compared to 2019 has plummeted. So kind of interested in where we are with that because that's a huge, to me, that's just as important as reading. They kind of go hand in hand, and I guess that's why they were combined. But I would love to see the writing information, and I wouldn't mind seeing the social studies information either. But I just feel like the writing is imperative, and especially as our students get older and they've got to apply for scholarships, and it's all about being able, and the reading is just as important. But we've added writing to every subject, or we had, and when my daughter graduated just last year, writing was incorporated into every subject because there was the need, because our writing was not at the level that it needed to be. So that's why the peak in interest for me is for the writing, to see where we're at with that and what we can do to get that back up where it needs to be.
I'd be happy to get that for you. Glad you asked that question because writing reporting will change this year. So something to look forward to in the spring. Writing will no longer be a separate test in 8th grade. It's now going to become part of the reading test. So there will be an integrated writing portion within the reading test. So no more separate scores, but it does become part and embedded in the reading. Also, that will happen in 5th grade. Currently, writing had been pulled down and it had become a local alternative assessment. Now writing will be embedded into the 5th grade reading SOL test. We're still kind of waiting as to what's going to happen in 11th grade. At this point in time, we still have the choice. We can give a writing SOL test, or we can do local alternative assessment there because we have the complication of the verified credit there. So at this point in time, it's still separate. But this spring, writing will be a part of the reading SOL test in 5th and 8th grade.
So we won't be able to even compare, once you incorporate writing into reading, that's going to totally change scores. There's some kids who are awesome readers and not awesome writers. And vice versa.
True.
And vice versa,
So would that be to possibly skew the issue, not only in this district, but across the country, about children not reading at the levels they should read? So if you combine.
Those scores are going to go down even more.
Well, but you still, the one thing that I liked about No Child Left Behind is that it pulled everything out so you could see. And now let's mix it up again. So what really is happening?
That's a great question. At this point in time, because they're changing all of this, we're not sure how they will score it. So we don't know if it will be one score. We know it'll be one test, embedded in one test, but we don't know at this point in time how they'll score the pieces, if they'll do it separately or combine it together. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
So one of the other thoughts that I have that just probably just crazy, when it comes to the chronic absenteeism, maybe we should talk with the kids and ask them, why are you not coming? Is there an issue that's going on? And, reading is a huge one. I can't read, I'm in the 9th, 11th grade, and I may as well just forget it because I don't understand anything else. Or I just don't feel comfortable because of this or that. It could be, the bullying situation. But I believe if we talk with these students, and it may be someone who they're comfortable with, not just the principal or whoever, to get an idea of how we help them come back in the building, if there's something in the building that they don't want to deal with.
I'm glad you shared that. One of the things that we ask all of our principals to do that have a problem with chronic absenteeism in particular is to assign students a mentor, somebody that they're comfortable with, will talk to, so that when they do miss school, or maybe all of a sudden, they've dropped from a C to an F, just somebody to check in with those children to find out, like you said, why aren't you coming to school? What's happening? What's going on? So again, that's something that they're working on this year.
I was going to suggest that we maybe put some survey into place, but that might be like targeting students, I suppose. But I just feel like there might be some way to get a general idea, as Ms. Franklin was saying, there might be a way to get a general idea of why students are missing school chronically. And I just immediately thought, oh, we can get a survey into place somehow. But yeah, it's just thinking about that. Yeah.
I have a quick question on this, that's a good idea. Slide 24, which is the VDOE update key finding. So all of these numbers that you've shown us are all just grades 3 through 8. So these don't include high school?
So for these slots, these are 3 through 8, that's correct.
So we don't even know what the numbers are in high school.
So we have the state averages. We could pull that out for high school, but not this kind of information. It's not been shared by the state. The one thing that they did say is that overall they're seeing high school students rebound more quickly. Elementary, middle school, not so much, and my guess is that's why they pulled it out this way.
Yeah, because we've been talking a lot about, high school and high school kids and all, but it's really, we're talking here, grades
Yes,
3
that's
through 8,
correct.
And that's a different, they're not late for school because they're driving to school or, not like their parents are, but, or going to Starbucks. That's a different kind of issue in 3rd grade.
True, but have you seen the lines at all the schools for the drop-off?
I know I have.
It's wrapped around everywhere. So yeah, a lot of it is parental driven, and
But they're there. And I'm talking
Right, I
about
understand that.
They're not there. I think there's probably.
Well, and I'm still a believer, Dr. Bragan, you hit it on the head earlier when you gave your report about the fact of extracurricular, and I've preached that for 15 years, that if kids want to come to school for something, they are more excited about being there. Sometimes when we are even younger ages, we don't realize the importance of our education. And it takes maturity sometimes to realize that. But if you want to go because of all those things, and sometimes I get pegged with just sports, and that's not true. I believe in the arts. I go to musicals, I go to plays, and try to do things like that. I support the FFA. I do the breakfasts when I can. Those are all important factors that keep kids, whether they're young, whether they're older, middle school, wanting to go to school, is being involved, whether it's culinary arts or floral arrangement or whatever it might be. If they get excited about being there for something else, then they're going to want to be there the next day, so.
It's everything and all that. You know, I think everyone had some really valuable information here. You know, I'm 58 years old. I look back and things were just different when I was a kid. You know, I tried to sleep in one day and got a bucket of water. I mean, nobody lays in a wet bed, right? It happened once, but it's a different world. And some of this is resilience we have to teach our kids. Some of it's some parenting issues, right? We got to help our parents to be more supportive of us and do all that. What I'm happy with, we met with the representatives from NRVCS today, and they're providing 8 additional support clinicians in the building, 8 TDTs and 8 clinicians, outpatient clinicians, and they provide different types of services, and that's just a great resource that we're going to have for this year, and hopefully if we have a clientele that they have a need, they can justify moving forward and they can stay with us. So I talked to, I forget the woman's last name, Jaylyn Weinbarger. I may say the last name incorrectly, but I asked her that in our October or November board meeting to give us an update, how we're doing, how many kids we're seeing, and I think that's one little step, moving that needle a little bit, getting more kids to be in school and teaching those resiliency skills they need for life, because we all deal with adversity.
You know, that's kind of the point that I want to touch on, not to be snarky, but I know that, a lot of this came from the guidance, and they use accountability a lot in that. So I guess I have a question. Who do we think that accountability is targeted at? Is that targeted at us, at school districts, principals, or is it a more holistic parent-student kind of accountability?
It's a great question. And what it came up at our Region 6 superintendent's meeting recently, we were talking about that, the accountability. Listen, we should take on all the accountability for our performance and assessment performances. When the kids are here, it's our responsibility for those 6 hours to do everything we can for all of our children to meet with success. And I'll own all that as the school superintendent. Hard for me to hold me accountable for the kids that aren't coming to school, though. And that was some of our argument of our superintendents, and that we do try, when they have the 3 days, the 4 days, the 5 days, the 10 days, and we take the children to court, and really it doesn't change the behavior. And I don't know what to do other than, as Dr. Wickham said and other board members, is create an environment where kids want to be here. Have that one person, whether it's a coach, an activity person, or just a teacher that they have a connection with, and we mentor them. That one reason why they want to get up and come to school every morning, right? But we do have some families that just refuse to send the kids to school. I don't know how to do it. Going to the house, knocking on the door, people not answering, people acting like they're not there. I'm not sure, but they're holding the school system accountable for those, and that was some of the concerns. Like, I don't know how, if we don't have and that's why it's important to work with our families. If we don't have the cooperation of our families, we can't do it alone. We really can't.
That was going to be my point, right? And again, like, when I first read these slides prior to tonight, and, when I got to slide 27, it really felt like we're just kind of kicking this down to the principals and say, it's your problem now, right? You got to figure it out. And I get it, because that's what we can control, right? And that's how you're going to solve this. But I think, based on this conversation tonight, there's appetite on this board to try to do more to that accountability in the community. I don't know what the answer is, but, let's explore options, because, exactly what you just said, we can do all this stuff, monthly check-ins and measures and stuff, but if the kids aren't showing up, then it's not gonna fix this problem.
So I want to speak to the grade levels here. And, the kids won't do this, the kids at that age. Well, when I was in the 4th grade, I did not want to be in the classroom I was in. I did absolutely everything I could to either make myself sick, pretend I was sick, whatever. And I almost failed 4th grade because of that, because of what was going on in that classroom. And it took my mother telling me, because she was working swing shift, and when she was on midnight, that bus would go before she got home, and I would creep down the stairs and go, I don't feel good. After doing that once, she told me, go to school. And I walked to school, and I didn't do that trick anymore, but I tried others, because I didn't want to be in that classroom. And that's why I think it's important to talk to our students to find out what's going on.
I have a question about the data. Barbara, so looking just narrowing it in on the reading and just looking at 2022, 2023. For all students, it's slide 3, so you have to scroll quite a ways. But anyway, for all students, we are above the state average by 3 points. But then when you break down all the student groups, right, we're below. Black students were below by 6 points, multiple race by 1 point. White students were below by 4 points, right? Students with disability by 10 points, and the economic disadvantage by 1 point, but then the only group where we're better than the state average is English learners by 6 points. So how's our average?
There are some additional student groups that are not included here just because the numbers are so small.
Okay, well, all right, maybe then the question is still relevant, like.
Well, the numbers are too small to be included as a state group, but
Sure.
maybe larger here.
Yeah.
So I'll go back and I'll double check the number. I looked at it a couple of times. I actually had the same question myself.
Yeah.
But that was my thought on it, because there are other reporting groups that are not shared here this evening.
And there are children who can overlap in 2 or 3 of the groups.
That is correct as
And the
well.
overall numbers are significant. If you look at the white population, it's probably 75-80% of our students. Students with special needs is 15%. So those numbers are skewed by the points. The
Sure, but I
aggregate
mean, if
number of
80,
kids.
90% of our data is showing below state average, how's our overall above state average? Like, in that category, I'm just, you know, I don't know, I think, yeah, it might be worth looking at those numbers again and make sure they're accurate. I mean, when I reviewed this, you know, when we got these presentations, I just looked kind of at the, you know, looked through them, and looking at the top line, I mean, things don't, you know, they look okay. I mean, we kind of, I feel like we go through this every year where we say, you know, we do need to be better in some of the, you know, some of the student groups, but overall, you know, we're actually not, you know, not doing too bad on, you know, on the overall numbers and things like that. But I don't know, I feel like every year we do this, and I think in some years the board has directed the administration to, you know, do this and that and the other, and I don't know, I think there's probably some nuance here, and it would be interesting to dig into these numbers a little bit more and know where we can best, I guess, put our, you know, get our bang for the buck for where to, you know, get some improvement, right?
That's why we need to find out what the true causes are. I mean, what is the cause? Why are
Yeah.
the numbers?
Yeah.
Why are if we're talking about the absenteeism, I mean, SOL scores, and that's, I think we know kind of why, but.
So the other question that I had, for what Dr. Walker talked about, you know, you've kind of rolled out a kind of a big plan for moving forward here, and I guess I'll still be that voice in the wilderness talking about stakeholders and stuff. I mean, that's quite an effort, and we're changing, looks to me anyway, like we're making a lot of changes here. So I guess I'd once again ask you and Dr. Bragan, you know, is this something that, you know, do we have stakeholder buy-in on this? Have we analyzed, you know, what the problems are, you know, what we think the problems are? Have we gotten the input from, you know, the not just classroom teachers, but, you know, some of the spec ed teachers and aides and others? You know, are we confident, you know, what's our level of confidence, I guess I should ask, that, you know, what we're going after is going to, you know, make a difference here?
And I'd like to just add one more thing on to what Mark said, is do we have the staff to do this?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was just adding on to his list.
That's a good question.
Just, could you go back to the slide with the performance of the students with special needs in reading? You know, one of the things, and I agree with what you said, Board Chair Chewbacca, that the majority of our kids, when you look at the aggregate, are performing okay, above the state average. But for me, any one of these metrics, just let me finish, that's below the state average is something that we need to work on. Me, as a superintendent, has to work on with our community and our schools. Because at a minimum, we're better than the state average. I believe that. I believe I am. I believe all of you are. I believe our community is. So that's not acceptable to me. And some of the things that we're looking at, you know, what we've done here in Montgomery County is exceptional for the number of kids that are included in the general ed setting. Where I came from, we didn't have as many kids included in the general ed setting. But in order for us to do that, for those kids to meet with success, they're being exposed to the general ed curriculum, which is great. But how much of it are they mastering and getting? And we could do better. And we could work with our staffs to train them better, to work cooperatively better. And I've done this. I was a special education administrator and a child study team member where I came from. In-class support, we used to call it when we had the 2 teachers in the classroom. It's like a marriage. It's an ongoing training that has to take place regularly, that those 2 people are going to talk from one adult to another more than they would with their spouse during the course of the day, because our lives get in the way, especially when you have little kids, right? You raise them, you don't have those conversations. And we have to work at it. And it has to be almost a nuanced dance where we pass the baton back and forth. Somebody leads, somebody supports. And I know Dr. Walker and us, we're putting together an initiative because we're graduating. We have a lot of young kids in the special education field that don't have those skills. They don't have those instructional support skills. They haven't had that cadre and that toolbox of skills you get over years of working with kids. So our job is to make sure that they have those and provide those supports. I've yet to meet a teacher that didn't want all kids to be successful. They really do try, and they want to do the best they can. It's our job to make sure they have the supports and the academic skills in order to do that. And what we're finding is we can do better. And I think Dr. Walker's initiative was, we got a plan to do better, working with Radford University, working with some of our own professional development to make sure we can help the staff do better. Are the staff, did they all buy in? Are they all 100% on board? I didn't talk to everybody, I don't know that. But I know that if I showed this data to any staff member and say, would you want your child in that class? I wouldn't want my child in a class with 34% of the students passed. So why is it okay to put somebody else's in there? So at some respect, and I'm talking for Tony Walker, I apologize, I don't care if they buy in. It's not okay. I'm the guy that's going to be held accountable, and you should all hold me accountable as school superintendent. That's not acceptable. And our people, we're going to help them. We're not going to say, hey, you just got to do this without any support. But I look at it, I got 3 daughters, I love them more than my own life. I wouldn't want any one of them in a class where 34% of the kids passed. And it's not okay to put Jamie Bond's grandkid in that class. So that's where we're coming from. I'm sorry, I was on a soapbox a little bit, Dr. Walker.
But my point with staff was not whether they bought in. Do we have enough people? Do we have enough special ed staff? Because my
No.
understanding is that's so at the end of the day, these are all great ideas, but you got to have people to implement them, and we don't. And are we budgeted to have more? My concern, and I hear this all the time from classroom teachers, that I don't even have I have spec ed kids in my class, and I don't even have a special ed teacher. I don't even have an aide, and if the aide's out, I have nobody. And because we all know that a sub doesn't really help a lot with an aide when there's an aide out, and so that's where my concern is. They're great ideas, but you got to back it up with the people who can do it.
100%, and Dr. Walker, you could fill in, I don't think it's a budgeting issue. I think we have some vacancies that we're trying to fill.
Right, yes. There
And
are 3
it's hard now,
Yeah,
yeah.
3 vacancies at the elementary level. There's one that has been hired, but, tied up with Radford University. They've got to get released because, right now the name of the game is no one's moving unless there's a replacement. And so, so that's where we're at.
Maybe we need to pay more to spec ed teachers. There's a concept.
Like our custodians and our registrars and our aides.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
Well, I mean, we've been trying to bump up those salaries.
Everybody.
Aides for sure, yeah.
So, I mean,
There are 4 aides that we have to fill as well. So right now, in the special education world, it's pretty difficult at this point in time. There's a teacher shortage out there, of speech, of OT, PT, spec teachers, so, but when we look at the trends from last school year, we had to put together a plan that will help support and move achievement. The numbers are what they are, and the numbers are not acceptable. When we looked and we spoke with each principal when they came before, and they developed their school annual plans, they had to take those plans back to their schools and put the plan before their teachers and say, hey, teachers, this is where we are at this point in time. And so we saw the data. And so the data does show that, our subgroups are not performing well overall. We can do better. And so as a staff, what can we do? And so the feedback that we received is all the schools, all the staff took ownership of where they were as a school and put plans in place of how they're going to move forward. So this is the support that the special ed department can help the schools, to help with student achievement. So that's what we're doing there. So, but every year there's a gamble with staff. Every school year, there's staff that move around, but our goal is to try to motivate staff to help staff to stay. But we have other mandates as well from the Department of Education that are mandates that has to be done. That does put pressure on our school staff, on our SPED teachers, and so our students. We support them wholeheartedly. But over the past, I would say 5 to 7 years, our students have come to our school division with significant disabilities, and so we have to support. And so that's when we come in, and we're finding that we have to create registered behavior technicians, more BCBAs to help counter that, to help support and meet those needs. Our autism population has tripled. And so, and that's what we're dealing with. And so all of that within the plan here, yeah, it's a robust plan, so we had to come up with something pretty robust, pretty, out of the box thinking, or Dr. Braden would say, innovate in the box. And so, that's what we had to do. We had to look at trends from last year because we cannot continue to repeat the same thing year after year. And so, it is a different plan, and it is, one that I talked to my staff about, and I had to get my staff on board because it was different for them. So but again, it's something that's needed, and it's something that will definitely move the needle, for the student with disabilities. Those numbers have got to come up.
Okay, thanks. Board, are we ready to move on? Anybody else want to? Okay.
Can I revisit the question you had earlier, just to verify? It was 76% in reading. We are ahead of the state. 2 subgroups that we did not report out on. Our Asian students' pass rate was 94%, which was 7 points higher than the state. And our Hispanic student pass rate was at 65%, which was 6 points higher than the state. So currently the state is showing that we are above the state average in reading.
Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, this is the most important thing we do, so I do appreciate I know we spent some time on that, but I think it's important too, and I appreciate the board's conversation and the staff's presentation on that, so. All right, next on the agenda, certification of MCEA representation for I guess we're starting with the Administrative Personnel Bargaining Unit. This is for collective bargaining. Dr. Reagan?
Yeah, these are basically the votes, the results from the voting. We had a third-party system, Ballot Point Education Election Services, and it was overseen by representatives for the school board and the attorney that we had, and representatives from the MCA, and they had the results from both elections, one for the Administrative Personnel Bargaining Unit and one for the Licensed Professional Bargaining Unit. So you'll see the first one there is for the Administrative Unit. There were 17 total votes, 12 in favor of collective bargaining, MCEA representative for collective bargaining, and 5 noes. So that was 17 total votes, 70% passing. And for the licensed professional collective bargaining question to be represented by MCEA, there was 622 yes votes, 22 no votes, 644 total votes, or 96.5% voted in favor. So the board needs to certify these results that they're accurate, and we accept them, and then moving forward, the process for collective bargaining will begin.
So we need a motion?
We do for both of those, to accept those, to certify those results.
Can I ask you a quick question before
Yeah.
you vote? Remind me again who's included in administrative personnel.
I think it's everyone that would be considered, it's 53 people that are in the total unit that would be eligible.
So it's only 17 people voted?
Correct. And I think it's everybody that is not connected with the school board office, which would be exempt, I would imagine. Is that accurate? I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% certain. I think it's those who have, it'd be like yourself, Dr. Wickham, me, HR, but I think some of the other central office administrators would be eligible because they don't have
supervisors and things like that.
supervisory capacity over those. And it's really people who have the ability to hire and fire, I believe, are the ones.
I could
who-
get you that exact list, so we did work with the MCA and the attorneys to make sure we had the exact people that would be
Well, I just read
considered.
here, 53 eligible voters, of which only 17 cast a ballot.
Correct.
So that represents only 32% of our administrative personnel.
Isn't the threshold 50% on that?
That was my understanding too. What we're doing today is certifying the vote, right? So they had to have 30% representation in order to be eligible to vote.
I see, so we're not necessarily
We're just
approving them
certifying the vote.
as, okay, I got you, okay.
And these-
Does
these
does the board
election
understand the
results?
difference between?
I got a call into Mr. Ray to clarify that exact question, and he didn't get back to me yet.
So what we're doing is we're basically certifying, saying this is the vote. We're not voting to accept MCEA as the bargaining unit at this time.
We're
Is that what
certifying the
I?
election results.
Okay.
Yeah, but the election results are to certify MCEA.
To be the sole representation. The question that Mark had, though, Mr. Board Chair Chewbacca, is a good one, that 17 people voted for the administrators, and they had 70% of that, which was 12 people out of the 17, but there's 53 eligible voters. So that 17% represents 32%. My initial understanding was they had to have over 50%.
I thought the resolution said 30.
30% was to bring it to a vote, if there were 30% membership. And then my understanding was in order to get that passed, where they would say, yes, you do represent us, it had to be 1%, a little bit over 50, not 51, but over 50%.
But 50% of the 53 or 50%
Yes.
of the 17? That's the question.
No, 50% of who voted.
So that's 17. So then they did make the 50%.
Well, I think it's,
I want to clarify that before.
I think it's unclear.
Yeah, so,
This is new for me. We've not been involved in collective bargaining, but never were we created one, so that's why we have Stephen Ray's the attorney that represents us, because our board council wasn't well-versed in this, so they recommended
right.
this particular person who's been really supportive and clarifying. But this is new for me. I don't want to make a mistake here.
Yeah, and actually, in reading I mean, what I'm supposed to ask for a motion for isn't just to certify the election, it's to certify the MCEA as exclusive representation for the administrative personnel bargaining unit. So
I would
I think on this one,
I would
I,
pause on the administrator's end, because I had a question on that I didn't get
okay,
answered.
okay.
yeah, I would not be comfortable voting.
Yeah, I agree.
The,
Is the rest of the board
Licensed
in
professional
agreement
personnel
on?
is easy, because
Yeah.
I have the percentage for that.
But I do think, because there was conversation about, and I believe you and I had conversation very early on about the vote being 50%, yeah, of the folks who actually voted.
Yes, nobody's disagreeing with that. We agree on that. The question is, the threshold that you have to meet of people who vote. And I was under the impression that it was 50%, at least 50% of your people had to vote, and then the result of that vote, of course, had to pass.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because 50%
Mr. Chewbacca, what did you
people
say
voted.
was the board in agreement on?
I'm not sure that we're in agreement
We're not in agreement in
on anything right now, but I think we will be.
We're in agreement for the licensed professional staff having over 50%.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question on so there's two different bargaining units here. There's the licensed professional staff and the administrative staff. So the licensed professional staff had a 68.7%, I guess, representation in the vote.
96% of them
And-
voted yes.
Yeah, and out of that, 96% of them voted yes. So any way you slice it, I think that one passes. But I think on the administrative side, there were 53 eligible voters and only 17 voted. Now, out of those 17, it was a majority, but nonetheless, I don't think that there's a question about whether or not it meets the criteria. And apparently, Dr. Bragan asked the question of our legal counsel, but did not get an answer in time for this meeting.
Correct.
Well, if we go
Great,
back-
thank you for that summary.
Yep.
If we go back and read what the resolution says, if the resolution says that it's 50% of those who voted,
Mhm.
then this passes.
Do you remember the meeting where the resolution
I've got
was?
it
Or
up.
do you have,
Up
okay.
right here, yeah, it says, a statement certifying that at least 30% of the employees in the bargaining units wish to be represented. So to me, that means 30% of the total have to have voted yes. Not 30% of who opted to vote, 30% of the total amount had to have voted.
Okay.
Right. But I'm not a lawyer, so I think it's good to verify
I think we
that.
should
but-
check. Now, my understanding.
I think it's best we table that one for tonight.
Yeah, my understanding of the 30% was that they needed the 30% in order to be eligible to bring it to a vote, because they needed to have 30% membership, that then they would bring it to a vote. But if that says 30% passing,
It was 30%.
right, to trigger the election.
30% to trigger the election, 30% represented. I see 30% all over the place.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Section 4A is what, go back up, sorry.
Is that not for?
I think if we have.
Section 4, this is A, yeah, that's where
This
we
hard to figure it out and interpret it. I
Yeah,
think
we
just
should.
pass on it.
Yeah.
Right, I agree. Let's get it right.
Because the lawyer's going to go back and look at the resolution.
Correct.
I'd rather hear it from him directly. Make sure we're.
I mean,
we're
50
all-
is not in here at all, period.
Right.
So whatever it is, it's based on 30. I just don't know 30 or what.
Yeah, it's just a matter of those who actually voted.
But
He needs to interpret the legalese.
even with the math, though, if it's 30%, 12 of 17, 70% of 32, it's not 30% passing.
12 out of 50.
12 out of 17 is
12
70%.
12 out of 53 is
70% of
not-
32 is not 30.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's wise to, let's just get clarification. This is new, I don't want to mess it up, and my apologies, because I did raise this question. I should have raised it earlier, so my apologies.
12 out of 53 is only 23%.
Ms. Cash, you didn't trust my math?
No.
Trust but verify. Okay, well, I don't think we have a motion on the table, so,
Well, we have,
Oh, do we have to like say we're going to table it?
well, so certifying the licensed personnel is the next item on the agenda, should we? So I'll move on to that one. So, do I have a motion to certify the Montgomery County Education Association as exclusive representation for the licensed personnel bargaining unit for the purposes of collective bargaining?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second, now we can discuss. So I think in this case, the math works out, again, no matter how you slice it. Yeah,
It's going to match.
so,
Be good.
One of my concerns with collective bargaining was the cost affiliated. Are we tallying and keeping count of what we're spending in additional attorney fees and things like that? Because that's something that's important to me and the constituents that I support.
I could definitely get that information for you.
Thank you.
If you want me to report out at the next meeting, I can show
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Who's picking up attorney? Do we pick up the attorney fees if we have to?
on our
Our
side,
attorneys.
yes. I would support estimates, I don't know how crazy we want to get about, every last penny on this, so, okay, yeah, all right. The rest of the board?
Yeah, and we have to remember that some of the stuff for starting things up is a one-time.
Correct, yeah. Well, I was, well, you guys go ahead, I guess, does anybody else have anything else to say before we go to a vote? I was personally heartened to see such a high, a 68.7% turnout on the voting, that's really high. And then to see 96.58% vote yes, it made me feel really good about what we've been working on to bring collective bargaining, and we've been saying that this is something that we are doing for our staff, and they certainly did not make liars out of us, so I'm excited about this.
I don't know, it depends on how you interpret the numbers. Also means means a third of them decided not to vote at all because they just
Well,
stayed out.
Yes, but you can't assume all those 300 people don't want it. I think usually when you look at voting and when you look at surveys and things like this, you look at the participation rate. And I'm saying that a almost 69% participation rate is incredibly high.
True, but when we had surveys during COVID time, we were presented with the fact that that was a misrepresentation for the rest of the people that did not get voiced. I heard that continuously, so.
I mean, I see, the numbers are the numbers, and that's fine, but I'm just saying, I guess I don't share in your just like, ooh, wow, this is like amazing, kind of, I think, you know. Thank you.
It's okay, you don't have to.
If you look at any election, you will see that it is a shame that the number of people who are eligible to vote and just choose not to vote, they don't in any election.
Okay.
When it comes to these types of elections, those people who choose not to vote or vote against it still reap all the benefits.
Yes, they do.
And they do not give them up.
Good point.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, board? All right, Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
No.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
No.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
5 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Okay. Next, we're on to unfinished business. We have no items of unfinished business, so new business, board. Anyone have any items of new business?
Mr. Chewbacca, I have something for new business. I know we didn't have it on the agenda, but I'm curious about a staff update for special education teachers and custodians, if that's possible.
I thought he just talked about.
I thought we
Talk
needed an
about
update on special education from Dr. Walker.
So, since we're in new business, I mean, are we getting an update next, the next meeting?
We will. We didn't have a
Okay.
staffing update on this one, but
So
if...
we'll get it at the next meeting, Marty.
Okay.
I have a question. I don't know if this is new business, but I'm going to bring it up because it came up this evening. And maybe it's I don't think my mic's working, but it's a Ms. Drake question probably. I thought, maybe I'm wrong or I misunderstand, but I thought public forum was not for political purposes to push candidates or anything like that. Am I correct on that?
I don't have the policy in front of me, but it's items of educational interest.
I thought it was specific to,
We probably should revisit that.
yeah, I would like to just revisit that and be
Policy?
clear on what the policy is about that as we move forward in the next few months. I just want to make sure that we're being accurate.
Yeah, my understanding from the advice that we've gotten from legal counsel on this is that by having a public comment section, we are basically opening up a opportunity for people to say whatever they want to say in the 3 minutes. So if they want to come up here and curse at us, we have to sit there and take it. And if even though I know our policy says items of educational interest, if they want to sing hymns to us or talk about something else that we may or may not think has an educational interest, that is anybody's freedom to do that. So this is what I have been, when I've been running the meetings, that's why I have not stopped speakers from anything. They get their 3 minutes. That's what we have created. Now, we do have an option as a board to remove public comment. There's nothing in the law that says we have to have public comment. So if public comment does become a forum for talking about all sorts of things that are not related to education, then I think it's within our purview to just remove it. So I think, for me, I think it's beneficial to hear what the public has to say. And I think so far, for the most part, it has remained focused on items of educational interest in our community. And so I think, for me, I'll continue to support it for now.
Speaking about candidates,
just wanted to verify that.
Okay. Any other items of new business, board? All right, we are on to announcements and information. Any announcements, information from anyone?
I just want to, I always am grateful to any of our students that come out and speak, and even if we don't always call attention to it tonight, we've got some time, so we're able to do that. But I would like to thank our speaker from Eastern Montgomery that came out, because Christopher Blacksburg, sometimes we do hear more from the students in our smaller schools. We don't always hear from, so thank you. And we do hear you, and that is something that we have talked about continuously and hope to get that resolved as soon as possible, but we are listening and we do hear you. We know it's important.
So he brought up something that we hadn't really talked about. He brought up the fact about you don't have an indoor track team, right? So they only have cross-country, and then they have spring track.
And then they have to go somewhere else to even do that.
Right.
They can't even
So the
go
track,
outside.
yeah, and we've talked about the track, yes, definitely. That's something we have talked, but we haven't talked about the fact that they don't have an indoor track team.
I'll just
I guess,
remind the
so.
board that we are in information and announcements.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm going to add to the announcement. Mr. Martin, thank you for coming and speaking. I've been diligently working on that for the last 2 years and fighting for that track. I'm going to continue to fight until it's done. So thank you for coming out this evening and staying for the whole meeting and voicing your concern. I really do appreciate it.
Get them an indoor track team, too.
And that too.
I'll just say, as a person who did track, indoor and outdoor.
Both my kids
when
ran.
you have indoor, it makes a huge difference because you are training year-round.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even though at Christiansburg, we ran those stairs, and I think now, boy, how unsafe that is, and it's still good. But anyway, yeah.
All right, any other announcements, board? All right, upcoming school board meetings is listed in board docs. And next, we need to go into closed session. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss one student matter and 2 personnel matters? I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Ms. Franklin? Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass? Ms. Parton? Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. We're in closed session. Yeah, I think we.
Wherever you want.
Yeah, we.
They want to stay here, we can stay here.
I mean, I'd rather.
Don't matter to me.
I'd rather
Yeah,
go
it's a little
somewhere else.
closer
It's a little
there.
closer in there, and yeah, let's move. And that way, we're not kicking everybody out either. Ah, thanks.